Well, good afternoon. This is Micah Young with Micah Young Podcast, and we want to thank you so much for being with us today. Appreciate your participation, appreciate you watching and listening. And if you like what you see or hear, if you'll just click like, or if you'll go to YouTube, you can subscribe and you'll get a notification anytime there's a new one that's out. And good news, we've finally got it up on Apple Podcasts. So if you just want to listen to it, you can listen to it on the radio or going down the road or whatever you want to do. So, but thank you for being with us. I'm excited. I have a dear friend with me today. Rick has been a friend for a lot of years. We tried to figure out how much it was, but it's probably, I know, 30 years that we've known each other.
Maybe 32. When y'all moved from Duncan.
Yeah, could be.
So however long, how many years that was.
And we've don't really see each other a lot, but when we do, we just kind of take up where we left off. And so I asked Rick to just share with us a little bit today about what the Lord's doing in his life. And first, I just want to get some history, let you get some history of where he comes from. And so, Rick, thank you for being with us today.
Hey, thank you.
Would you just share a little bit about where you're from and where you grew up, and then we'll get into the heart of everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm 54. Actually, Micah married my wife and I almost 30 years ago now.
Wow.
So that's the time has really flown. And actually, I was born in Alabama, but through the military and all that, we moved back to the Dallas area, and then took residence in Red Oak since '79. And
Wow.
so we grew up in Red Oak, and through that period of time, my family, there's three of us biological, and during that time, my parents got into fostering, and so we were a foster family for about 11 years, and really had a really great time with that, and just watching the Lord move and work with us with these kids that we brought into our home. And then, like I said, met my wife at Grace,
Yeah.
and maybe it might have been Calvary first.
It was Calvary then.
It was Calvary then, yeah. And so through friends and stuff, my wife's friend and Mike and his friends, there was a connection, and so I actually met my wife that way. So, and we have three boys, and I just became a grandpa.
That's cool.
So I'm a papa, and so that's been just really exciting. But that's in a nutshell, kind of.
That's cool. So you were a big baseball star, or soon to be.
Yeah,
God had other plans.
Yeah, that was cool, because in high school I played basketball and baseball, and so had the opportunity to actually go to college on a baseball scholarship, and so the Lord provided for that, and so I was able to play ball. And then as I got involved with that, I soon realized that this is not my purpose, or this is not the focus that the Lord wanted me to have with. And so I finished up my baseball career, and then ended up meeting my wife on the second row on the right side down there as I was up on the praise and worship. And I think I remember that day, because I was like, I told Mike, I said, Mike, I know what you preached about that day. All I could think about was going down there and meeting this young lady that I saw for the first time.
She's a sweetheart.
Yeah, she is.
That's been great.
Yeah.
Been good history together.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I spent several months now, we started talking about shame, and we've put out several podcasts on that, and people have really responded well to that and talked about how it's been effective in their life. And as Rick and I talked, he just has some really encouraging things to say about how God had worked shame out of his life,
Mm-hmm.
and what he was dealing with growing up. And so I want to ask him to just share some of that, of what effect it had on your life. How did you begin to have to deal with that? And of course, at the time, we don't know we're operating out of shame.
Right.
We're just trying to get rid of this feeling, this worthless feeling, or this feeling that we don't measure up, and or shame, the spiritual tar that comes with it.
Right.
And so kind of give us a little background of how that played out in your life, and what God's done in your heart to free you from some of that.
No, absolutely. So What's interesting is that I think we many times we kind of identify ourselves as a certain way. We have a certain personality. This is the way we handle things. So whether it's conflict or really anything that we'll make the statement. Well, this is how I am. So just kind of accept that, and that's the way I am on things. And what I began to do a few months back, really, maybe even longer than that, was this search for really just seeking the Lord and just wanted to see how the Lord actually saw me. I know the Lord loves me, and that's not a question. My salvation is intact, and not a question there. But I just always felt like there was something that was there that wasn't quite right, and really just wanted to just earnestly seek the Lord on that. And the question was, and Micah, you had brought this up years ago, and maybe even recently you could have, but you said, ask the Lord, how are we doing? Like, where are we at? Don't just, say the standard prayer or whatever. But so what I did was I consistently, each time I prayed, I said, Lord, how do you see me? Like, I know you love me, but how am I doing? Like, kind of give me like
what's your assessment?
Yeah, what's your assessment? And I tell you what, you have to be very careful about what you pray for, because the Lord will absolutely show you. Now, I would love to say that it just happened overnight and, I got all this list of things and all that. But no, the Lord was just kind of peeling back. And I know that he did that in a way that was very convicting. There was no condemnation at never in point during this process. And that's where it's the Lord, is that when you feel his love through this, and it's not like there's a spotlight, but there's more like a comfort, like he's your comforter during this process. And so that's what I felt. And so very interesting, as we peel off the layers, the Lord was showing me some things about myself. And one of those things was that really, and ultimately, was my pride. That I'm someone that, and I even, the work that I do with computers, I'm very thorough, I'm very specific. Everything is kind of in line, and everything is specific. And in my life, I found that I was that way. I was drawn to that type of work, which is good, but my personality and the way that I handle things. And so I was always a rule follower. That even growing up, I always did exactly what was expected of me. My parents rarely had problems with me. In fact, they would brag on me and go, hey, this is the perfect son. And, he would never get in trouble and all that.
I never had that problem.
Yeah. You never had that problem?
No, I never had that problem.
No. So, and so the Lord was showing that to me about my personality. I'm like, that's very interesting. And as I dug deeper and deeper, he was showing me that it was pride. So then it actually opened up. The next thing that he was showing me was like, okay, well, let's examine why you are that way. Like, why do you respond the way you do? And so he kind of took me back in conversations. And one of these, and I don't even know if I shared this with Micah, but I was into year number 3 of my marriage. And my wife and I were having a discussion that turned into an argument. And that argument got a little nasty. All of a sudden, we started saying stuff. She said something about my mama, and I said something about her daddy or whatever. And all of a sudden, it got personal. And so now we have this emotion involved. And so we're upset with each other. Well, during that conversation, the Lord revealed to me that I was wrong. I was actually wrong in the conflict. My position and everything I was thinking about was wrong. Well, at this point, it didn't matter, because I was so mad. I was so upset by what she was saying that now it's a competition. Now the important thing is that I'm going to be right, and it doesn't matter. So try to think of yourself in an argument that you don't even believe. So I'm arguing, I'm trying to convince my wife of something that now I don't even believe.
But you got to be right.
But I got to be right, because I'm going to be the winner. I'm going to be the victor in this situation. Well, during this conversation or argument, I stopped. It became ridiculous. It really did. It became ridiculous. And I started laughing, which that didn't go over well when you laugh in a conversation.
An argument.
An argument. And she's like, turned from me and she's upset. And I said, wait, honey, I want to tell you, I realized halfway through our conversation that I was wrong. And then, of course, she perked up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, tell me more. And so I shared with her about my heart and about how I really wanted to be right after being upset and being offended, that being right was more important than the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so that happened, and I took away from that after it happened. I was thinking, one of the most important relationship in my life on this earth, I was willing to do whatever it took to win.
Mm-hmm. Which means somebody's got to lose.
Someone's got to lose. And what affected me was, it wasn't just like another person. This is my wife that I love and I cherish. But because of the circumstances, I was going to be right. And so the Lord kind of hit me there. Okay. So he kind of took me to a place. Well, I took it for a little bit, and then I just kind of dismissed it and thought this was just a situation. So I can go on and on about a lot of different things that happened during that time. But what the Lord did was continue to peel back, not just showing me instances like that, but then he got back to the origin story, my origin story about where I began. And as I said, we were a foster family bringing in abused kids. But see, the other side of that is that the first 9 years of my life, the same man that brought in abused kids, he was abusing us. He abused my brother, myself, and my sister. And there was abuse those first 8-9 years of our life that I had to figure out what's the best way to handle this abuse.
How do I navigate this?
Yeah. As a child, you're trying to navigate, and some of the things I would do is I'd go to my room and I'm like, that's probably why I'm so good at building stuff. I play with Legos and Lincoln Logs and Connects, and I built all kind of things, and I built stuff, and I stayed in my room. But the other thing that I did was I thought, you know what? If I do the right things, if I say the right things, if I'm obedient, I'll be the perfect son, and I do exactly what I'm told, then I'm going to keep my head down, and everything's going to be good. And it did help, but when you're talking about someone that's not saved and that is young and abusive, that didn't hold. Mm-hmm. But I will say this, it established that thinking early on to where that became how I handled everything. Mm-hmm. Now, my dad got saved in 1979. I was 9 years old, and it was an amazing thing. I saw my dad transform and the Lord do some amazing things. And so we pass along and we go along, and I'm continually being the same person that I am. My dad and I work together, and in back, this has been about 15 years ago, my dad and I were eating lunch, and he came to me and he said, "Hey, I want to share something with you." And I said, "Sure, Dad. Yeah, what's up?" Because we ate lunch all the time. He said, "I want to tell you, I know the Lord has forgiven me, but just because the Lord's forgiven me doesn't mean that there hasn't been hurt and pain and all this that happened." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, thank you, Dad. I appreciate that. I appreciate your thought of that." When I came away from that, I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that. Mm-hmm. I emphasize that to say the fact I am probably 35 years old, and it affected me. That statement from him affected me so much. Now it makes sense, because what I see is that I never quite healed. Although, yes, the Lord, forgave my dad and all that, I did not truly heal from all that abuse from the past. Mm-hmm. And so what I deal with, like you said, I dealt with the shame. And how do you deal with shame? You cover it up.
That's right.
You cover it up in whatever way you can.
And what we don't realize is that, yes, sin damages our soul. But what we also forget sometimes is being sinned against damages our soul. When someone sins against us, when someone abuses us, when someone is unjust towards us, it not only affects the person that brings that message, but it also affects us. Mm-hmm. And allowing God to heal that without accepting responsibility. In other words, I didn't do this to myself, but it was done to me. And I'm asking the Father to heal that in my heart.
Amen. So
shame became a motivating factor that you dealt with by doing all the right stuff.
Yeah. Just that's I mean, that's what you do. That's how I think as a child, obviously it's so innocent, and you do a certain behavior, and I think what happens is that behavior continues on, and even through my own salvation and all that, I hung on to those behaviors. I never really asked. You look back and you think, why didn't I do that? But you look back and go, well, I never asked the questions. I never really dove into it. It wasn't to say that the Lord wasn't getting my attention and working with me on those things. I think it was that it was imprinted to me that was who I was, the way I responded to things, even the way I handled conflict. When my wife and I would have a conflict initially in our marriage, I would shut down. I would say, "You're right. You're right." I didn't want a conflict because conflict was a negative thing. Still, even though I saw a lot of good things after and once my dad got saved, I still had carried that in and was, it's like it was just part of my DNA. And we know the truth about that.
Yeah.
It's not right.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what happened.
Well, now, if you adopted this philosophy that says, okay, if I do the right thing, I won't get hit. If I do the right thing, I'll be accepted. I'll be approved. Did you carry that over into your perspective of the Father, of our spiritual Father, and how did that affect your relationship with Him until you begin to realize that wasn't true?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I definitely did. I think I've kind of maneuvered around that, but I think and I said all the right things, but I think deep down inside, I know deep down inside, I had a skewed viewpoint of the Father. I knew He loved me, but then all of a sudden, I'm really kind of anticipating certain characteristics of the Father that really were not accurate, and really didn't make sense, and certainly was not biblical at all based upon this way of thinking that I had developed and had really, it just burned deeply into me.
Right.
And I think so deep that was an area that I just really did not even allow to surface. Maybe didn't like don't even go there, type of thing. Don't even go there.
Absolutely.
And so I remember even talking to other people and other men and like trying to counsel and mentor other men. I look back and go, I could see where I was kind of skewed in the way that I was even kind of looking and approaching our Heavenly Father.
Well, I think you said something else too that's important. You said by the time you were 9, that perspective had already had already taken hold. Yeah. And I think that's so important for fathers to understand that those first few years of a child's life, that's the formative years. And I'm telling you, their perspective of life is formed during that period of time, maybe more than any other period of time in their life. And it's a survival mode. It's how am I going to survive? How am I going to get affection? How am I going to get love? How am I going to be approved? And without consciously doing that, we formulate those in our heart. And because the dad to the child is God, whenever he does have a relationship with the Father, that translates. It transfers into his understanding of how God's going to treat him.
Yeah.
So as you begin to allow the Lord to open these things up in your life, what kind of things did He tell you about you? You talk about what I believe about myself, but embracing what the Father says about me. So what did you feel like the Lord said to you about you that brought healing into these areas and was able to drop your guard with the Father?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing, which maybe intellectually I knew, but really had to the heart of the Father really, I just really like absorbed that, was that He said, there's nothing, because you understand there's nothing you can do for me to love you more. And I'm like,
what a shock.
Well, especially in the world that we're in, right?
Yes. Having that perspective already ingrained.
Performance driven. And you think, okay, I've been a Christian for a long time. I was a Christian since I was 12 years old. And to think about the Lord was kind of just, really, I'm having to reevaluate my thoughts and the way that I saw the Father, And again, all these things were based upon what I experienced in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a lot of good things with the transformation of what the Lord did with my father. But it's that question, and this is where I'm at now, is like, Lord, help me to see why has it been such a struggle and difficult for me to really let go of the things that I have adapted in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things was that He showed me it was the pride issue, and ultimately we have to ask the question: was what the Lord did enough?
Yeah, that's good.
That's the thing, and
That's good.
and so I say, Lord, I say, Lord, well, Lord, you know my heart. You know that I
Yeah.
think what you did was enough. But right now I'm at the stage of being open to say, Lord, maybe I'm not showing that. Maybe I'm
Mm-hmm.
really not completely, wholeheartedly thinking that what you did was enough in my life.
Mm-hmm. Well, and learning too that awareness is a continual process. It's layer upon layer, and when He reveals something, and then He reveals more, and then we think we're, at the end of that, and He says, no, we've got more to show you, which just reveals how complete the work of the cross was.
Yeah.
We can never absorb all of it in just 100 years or at the most, or 80 years that we live. How can we ever absorb all of that?
Mm-hmm.
And let me ask you this: did becoming a father, did He use that to reveal to you what kind of father He was? Because it's different being fathered, and it's a
Yes.
whole lot different now than
Yeah, it is.
becoming a father.
Yeah, I absolutely. Becoming a father, um, there was some emotional side to that because I was dealing with these things of, well, I don't want to do things like I had done
Like
to
was
me,
done to you.
done to me. So there's an emotional side of that, and then you struggle with, as your kids get older, how you deal with conflict, and because in a way, that the way you handle conflict is not healthy, but then you want to show them that how the proper way and how to handle conflict and situations. And so the Lord got really dealt. That's a good question. The Lord really dealt with me on that, and that's where I think there's always been these little things that were stirring up.
Mm-hmm.
It was the Lord. I know it was the Lord stirring up
Mm-hmm.
things. And I tell you what, interesting enough, I've been telling you that I told you that I've been dealing with this. The Lord's been working with me for a couple of months. Well, my grandbaby is 2 months old. And I'm just saying, very interesting that some of this, when I saw that grandbaby and I held that grandbaby, it's like there's something in me that was that now that grandfather side was
Yeah.
even more so. And I think too it was a motivator because all this that I'm sharing now, I've shared with my boys.
Mm-hmm.
I've shared with them and they're like, Dad, that is just so, that is so awesome to see
Mm-hmm.
what the Lord's doing. And I think that's very important that anytime the Lord gives us something it's not just for us,
Right.
it's for us to share. That's
Right.
why I wanted to share this. I also think it's very important too, and I was sharing with Mike on this, that what I'm sharing is not just for not just for everybody, but I think also specifically for men.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's an aspect, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's that tough guy thing or whatever that we have a hard time. But I want to say, men, be open to what the Lord
Mm-hmm.
wants you to change in your life. But also, if you really want to know and to have a full assessment, like Micah was saying, you ask the Lord that question.
Yeah.
That question of, Lord, how do you see me spiritually and where I'm at? Is there any area in my life that's keeping me from having the freedom in you that is available to me?
Mm-hmm.
See, we're not talking about something that the Lord is saying, okay, I'm not going to give you this until you do this.
Mm-hmm.
It's no, it's me.
Mm-hmm.
It's my perspective, the way that I was seeing the Father, The Father was available.
He's done it, yeah.
He's done. He has nothing to prove, and He's there for us. But in our lives, we have all these things that separate us from what we see as the love of God, and we're creating those walls. We're creating all those things, and so what I say is just what a blessing that the Lord is dealing with me. I have so far to go. I'm excited about it, but I definitely wanted to make sure I shared, at least share kind of what the Lord's doing right now. And if you are experiencing that in your life, no matter who you are, to really evaluate and ask the question to the Lord, Lord, where am I at? Where are we at? How do you see me? What are there some things that I need in my life? Because we can all feel pretty good about ourselves, but when it comes down to it, don't you want to know the truth about what the Father says about you?
Yeah, that's right. If I remember whenever my wife and I had children, we got together and we determined, okay, we're not going to deal with our children the way we were dealt with. Now, neither one of us was physically abused, but there were still things that we saw that were out of sync. And I know that it takes a lot of humility to say, I don't know what to do with these kids. Don't rely on, well, that's how I was raised, so I'm going to raise them. Don't rely on that, because be better. Let the Lord make it better for them than it was for you. I mean, God knew that exactly what I needed. He gave me 2 girls. I'd have killed a boy. I mean, I just know I would have, because I was so hard and so judgmental. But it took those 2 girls,
Amen,
to melt my heart, and then to give me 4 granddaughters. I mean, he knew. Finally, we got a boy, but he knows what it takes. But allow your heart to be humbled and say, Father, what do you want to show me about me? Amen. And what do you want to show me about what not to impart to my kids, and what to impart to them? I want to be an expression of the Father to my children.
Amen.
Of what God is like to us. Well, that's good, Rick. I really appreciate that, brother. And I appreciate your walk and your honesty with the Lord. I appreciate our friendship. Like I say, we don't spend a lot of time together, but I always enjoy our times together.
Me too.
And I know you have a heart for men and for the family and for children. And Rick teaches children where he fellowships. He and his wife, I think, are you both still doing that now?
Yeah. Three-year-old. Our lane at this moment is, we've been doing it for 4 years with 3-year-olds, and so we pray over them and we serve but when we're serving those children, we're serving the whole family, and it's a blessing.
Awesome. That's good. Well, thank you for being with us. And again, if you like what you've seen, just click on like or go to YouTube and you can subscribe, and you'll get a note every time you get one. So thank you, and Lord bless you.